So the process that I will be explaining is called intramembranous ossification. This occurs in fibrous connective tissue, and it also is the process that flat bones go through. So we begin, and these cells are called osteoprogenitor cells. These cells, they start coming together and they begin to duplicate. Once they duplicate and come together, they differentiate, which means they turn into a different type of cell. So they turn into what the cells that are called osteoblasts. We've got our osteoblasts that replace them. Perfect. These osteoblasts, they then release osteoids. So these osteoids come and the osteoblasts release them. So these are coming out of the osteoblasts. Then once the osteoblasts release these osteoids, the osteoblasts are then calcified. So we have some calcium that will come and bind to them to calcify them. And once they're calcified, they come into these little hollowed out living spaces called a lacunae. So here we have this osteoblast in our lacunae. There we go. And this ossification that I'm explaining, this happens in centers known as ossification centers. As this process continues, we actually begin to see something else happen. So this happens, the ossification has to go on for quite a while, but we start to see these little guys called spicules. And these spicules, they start coming together more and more, and they ended up attaching, and they just form a bigger chunk. And once they connect, then they start surrounding little blood vessels. And this surrounding of the blood vessel, this is what actually causes our bones to be so highly vascularized as they are. Also, it helps during this process so that nutrients and wastes can be exchanged more easily. And so we don't have to go through a whole nother process. So wastes and nutrients just travel through the blood. Okay, so the initial bone that is made from this is spongy bone. And spongy bone will then go through a process of remodeling to turn into compact bone. So the main components of a flat bone are it has a compact bone, and then it has our spongy bone in the middle and another compact bone. So it's kind of, the spongy bone is just compressed and sandwiched together by compact bone. So the way that this happens is our spongy bone, the osteocytes at the edge of the spongy bone can turn into what are called osteons. So osteons are kind of just like a bunch of circles. Looks kind of just like circles, like all stacked into each other. And these osteons are building blocks for this compact bone that I'm showing you here. The compact bone then, it will surround and form on the very edges of the spongy bone. We also, this spongy bone can be replaced by a medullary canal. And this medullary canal, it just replaces it. It also has periosteum on the very edges. This periosteum has fibrous connective tissue, and so more osteoblasts can be produced, which allows the bone to grow in appositional growth. So it builds layers and layers and causes the bone to widen rather than lengthen. It widens the flat bone. So that is the process of intramembranous ossification. And